Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Elaine.
How are you?
Doing great today.
Very good. Welcome to Yet Stands Inc. and our Thrive, Flourish, Prosper show. Just to let everybody know, we are talking to Coach Rachel Grant. She is a life coach out of, you live in California, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm based in San Francisco.
Yeah, San Francisco. And Rachel is a survivor of sexual assault, and she has gone on to do really wonderful things through her coaching and advocacy. So we're going to talk about that tonight, to kind of spread hope, let everybody know that there is definitely a stage of life beyond surviving. So we
Hmm.
want to, so we that's what we want to do. That's what we want to talk about tonight. And again, Yet Stands Inc. That is the nonprofit organization that is hosting this. And we're talking about Beyond Surviving. Okay. So, Rachel, I'm just going to get into it and start
Okay,
asking questions.
let's do
Okay.
it.
Okay. All right. And if you see me look away every now and then, I might be looking at my questions or whatever. But um, so, Beyond Surviving, what does that mean?
Mm. Well, this phrase, this term, this idea, this what is now turned into kind of a lifestyle or a way of living was really born out of a moment in my journey where I was participating in a community development program. So the
Mm-hmm.
idea was that we would put on some kind of event around a topic or an issue that we felt strongly about. And of course, given my history, trauma survivorship really came to the forefront. And so I was developing this event to bring people together to talk about it. And I was really struggling with what to call it. And I was sitting with one of my partners in the program, talking this through and kind of describing my own journey and experience with sexual abuse and my life and how things had unfolded. And he said, I don't know what to call your event, but I just want to tell you, like, you are such a survivor and you've made it through so much. And I'm just really admiring like how strong you are and how resilient you are, which were all really beautiful, wonderful things to say.
Mm-hmm.
But that particular day, I was not having it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just got super angry and I, responded to this man. And I was like, you know what? I am just really sick of surviving my life. Like, that's just not enough. I don't want to do that anymore. Who wants
Mm-hmm.
to just survive their life? There has
Right.
to be something beyond survival.
Beyond. Love that.
And he just kind of starts laughing at me, right? Which I was like, hey, excuse me. I'm having a moment here. Why are you
Right,
laughing?
right,
But,
right.
he pointed out, like, well, I think you have the name. And, ultimately what Beyond Surviving has evolved into and what it really represents is the underlying core philosophy of Beyond Surviving is that trauma is not a life sentence.
Mm-hmm.
We are not meant to spend our lives in recovery, like that
Mm-hmm.
stage in the healing process where we're very consumed and
Mm-hmm.
focused on the trauma and healing and adapting and resolving things, that we can move past that and go
Mm-hmm.
on to live and, as you say, thrive and flourish,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that we build in our capacity to really respond to life from our
Mm-hmm.
adult empowered self, right? We're not being constantly drawn and dragged back in, to trauma narratives that they might pop up, but we know how to so, kind of immediately respond to them, that we feel really strong and self-resourced, and we
Mm-hmm.
have a sense of completion and integration with the things that have wounded us.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
I totally agree with that. It's like they say in one of the programs that I had to go through, which is Narcotics Anonymous, and they talk about, sick and tired of being sick and tired, you
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
and it's like that's, you kind of have to come to that place of, like you said, I'm tired of just surviving, it's
Mhm.
like there's got to be more, there's got to be better,
That's right.
yeah, you
Yeah.
get to that point where it's like, yeah, there's got to be better. um So you're a life coach, is that correct? Is that how you would
Yeah, I mean, I guess
title
technically
yourself?
I call myself a sexual abuse recovery coach, but it's a completely
Okay.
made up title. But
Okay.
just to really capture the focus. Of course, what's really, fascinating is when you're working with sexual trauma, you end up dealing, of course, with life, relationship, career, all of these things become interwoven. So
Mhm.
I've had to really, find my footing when it comes to supporting, my clients around these other areas in their lives, if you will, beyond just, resolving and healing the trauma. So they both count.
Mhm.
Life coach, sexual abuse recovery coach, it's all the same for the
It's all
most
the
part.
same. Okay. Okay. Um, so what does that look like?
Yeah.
Someone comes to you for your service. What does that look like?
So coaching is very distinct from therapy. It was actually a very conscious decision that I made as I was working through my master's in counseling psychology. So I did complete my graduate work and I was on track to become like a marriage and family therapist.
Hmm.
But as I was doing that work, there were just a few different things that struck me about therapeutic models that didn't really fit with the way that I wanted to work with people, the way that I wanted to
Mhm.
tackle really solving this problem.
Mhm.
I was very clear I didn't want to deal with any like diagnosing. I didn't want to get into
Yeah.
that world. And I really wanted to start to meet people at a very specific spot in their healing, which is when they've done that place of acknowledging what's happened. Like they've come out of the place of denial or dismissing and minimizing it, and they've
Mhm.
also done some processing around just kind of naming and talking about what happened, maybe putting a few pieces of the puzzle together, like, this is why I struggle with that. This is what's happening over here. But most of the people who really find me and end up working with me have gotten to a place in their journey where they're starting to ask the question, so what do I actually do about this?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I've
Yeah.
done the talking, I've done the
Mhm.
narrating, I've done the acknowledging, but now that's starting to feel maybe almost repetitive and potentially even re-traumatizing.
Mhm.
And I want to understand what it takes to actually resolve and move forward. And so the Beyond Surviving program is a very specific step-by-step process. And so it's different from therapy in that, right? Therapy, you kind of drop in what's on your mind, you just kind of let it go, let it flow. But with Beyond Surviving, I've really spent these last 15 years researching, studying, practicing, and coming to the place of understanding kind of like what we need to do when in order to maximize healing and minimize re-traumatization.
Mm.
And so there's a curriculum, if you will, which is
Mhm.
also in part because my background is in education. I
Yeah.
taught elementary school and these sorts of things. So I just think this way, like scaffolding
Mhm.
learning, and that we need concept,
Mhm.
idea, and then application practice. And
Yeah.
so when I have a consultation with someone, I'm really listening for, are they ready for the Beyond Surviving program? Is this going to be a great next step for them? And then if we decide to work together, we either do that through an 8-month one-on-one program or through a 4-month group program. The curriculum is
Okay.
the same either way. It's just kind of, do you want one-on-one support and a little bit of a slower pace? Or do you want to be in the group environment and go through it a little bit more quickly? And then, yeah, all throughout the program, at every single session, we're talking about, so here's the situation, here's why it's a problem or a challenge, and then here's what we're going to do about it. Here's a skill, here's a tool that you're going to really go out and practice, like actually
Mhm.
apply in your day to day, because that's really where the healing happens.
Right, right. So now when you mentioned the group, is that in person, online?
Mm.
How are you doing that?
That was another reason why I really wanted to be a coach,
Okay.
because I just saw the limitation of therapy, that, it would be, in person, in an office, in my city, and I know that there are a lot of people in areas of this country for sure, but also of the world who need access to resources. And I wanted to be able to reach people more globally and internationally. So I work virtually with all of my clients. In the early days, I even just did phone calls.
Okay.
Some of my clients are still just on the phone. But of course, Zoom, right? Of course,
Mm-hmm.
COVID, people were on it before that, but still, that
Uh-huh.
really changed. So most of my clients we meet by video, and I
Okay.
have clients all over the country, all over the world, and I love that about my work. I
Yeah.
get to really
Yeah.
reach into, different areas of the world and support people.
That's awesome. That really is. That's really awesome. And I want to let everybody know that I am actually, Rachel does offer um, sort of a free process to um, her coaching. And so I've decided that I am going to check it out. I'm going to go through it. And I think that would be a great way for me to, encourage others, to look
I love
into it and to really, look at moving beyond surviving. For
That's right.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Um,
Beyond Surviving Basics video course is just a 5-day, video course, but it
mhm,
is, certainly one of the things that I've always had as an intention in my work is having things that are accessible. Because
mhm,
we know, trauma often impacts, us in many, many different ways.
mhm,
And we sometimes are resourced, we sometimes aren't. I know one of the barriers for me along the way in my own journey was just I flat out didn't have the money
mhm,
for things. And so everything from my donation based monthly group to the Facebook group to the podcast to this 5-day video course is there so that people can access healing regardless of circumstances, or also even if they have means, as a way of getting started and getting an
mhm.
introduction and kind of let me feel this out, let me see how I
Yeah.
feel about this chick and her
Yeah.
approach and how she comes at this problem, right?
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. I love that. I think that that is great. Um, so is there any, I don't know, maybe any particular maybe success story that stands out for you? Someone
Oh
that
my goodness, where do I
ah!
start? Where do I start? My goodness me. Well, so many people just immediately, came to mind. And when I first started this, I was actually in church at the time, and I went to the pastoral care guy, and I said, I think I've gotten to a place in my own healing, and I've got some ideas about how to work with sexual trauma that I want to try out. Would you be willing to support me in this effort?
Mhm.
And it turned out that he himself had been sexually abused.
Wow.
So, the issue was near and dear to him. And so I started just, with these beautiful women who were there, and I said to them on day one, I have no idea if this is going to work. God forbid it makes it worse.
Right,
Right?
right,
Like, full
right, right.
disclosure, like, we're going to be really tender and slow here. Um, but those women I always think of first because they are the ones who said yes at the beginning and took the chance.
Mhm.
And I'll never
Yeah.
forget, like, there's so many little stories from that particular group, but one woman in particular in this moment is standing out who, one of the things we often do as a result of sexual trauma is diminish ourselves.
Mhm,
And, our dreams and our aspirations
mhm,
become very limited because we're inundated with feelings of worthlessness, or
mhm,
like we don't have the capacity. And in one of the sessions she said, I'm doing this administrative work, but what I've really always wanted to do is be a doctor, but now I'm too old. And she was in her 30s.
mhm.
But maybe the idea generally of being a doctor, you start very young. And
Yeah.
by the time she graduated from the program, she had quit her job and enrolled
Wow.
in medical school,
Wow.
and she's now a doctor, right?
I
Living
love
that life,
that.
living that dream.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about that, with the dreams and what we do to ourselves and how we
Mm,
kind of give up on ourselves, give up on life. And I certainly went through that.
mhm.
As a child, I wanted to be a dancer. I wanted to be on Broadway, and
Me too! Oh my
you did?
god!
Oh my gosh.
Girl, we better
That
have a little
was
dance party!
that was the dream. That was
Yes!
the dream. So I don't know if you're familiar with Alvin Ailey,
Of
because I
course.
grew up in New
Oh,
York. And so Alvin
amazing.
Ailey, and that was kind of the big
Yeah.
that was what I wanted to do. And after things happened with
Mm.
with the sexual abuse and the blame and the shame of it, I mean, I just felt like I just never wanted to dance again because it was
Oh my
too.
gosh.
Do you know what I mean? It was
I
like,
do. I do.
it's too much. How can I get on these stage and I have all these
Right,
eyes on me, and
right.
and I gave that up, and that thing of hurting ourselves. I think that's one of the ways that we hurt ourselves, right? We
Mhm.
just give up on ourselves.
Yeah.
um but then the other things that you do, like for me, a way of coping, a way of medicating was through drugs. So
Right.
then, and little did I know that I would, be a drug addict, you know
Yeah.
and live that life
Mm.
for years. And so it always just makes me really, really sad and heartbroken that, we as victims, and, others that are out there, that's what we do,
Yeah.
and go through so many years of just suffering and just feeling bad and hurting, and,
Yeah.
all of those things. And so, I'm just so grateful, though,
Mm.
that there is a place,
Right.
because when I was younger, listen, we didn't,
Nothing. Mm-mm.
nothing, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and if
Yeah.
there was, nobody knew about it, nobody talked about it. And so I'm
Yeah.
just really grateful, for a program like this,
Mm.
that addresses the issue head on, you know.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
goodness. I agree. Oh my goodness. So yeah, the ways that we get so disconnected
Yeah.
from our authentic self, from the self that
Mhm.
we were really meant to be, and that I often frame it that way. Like this work is really all about shedding the layers that have
Mhm.
separated you from
Mm.
your actual self, your
Mm.
authentic self.
Yeah.
And, you get to go be the person you were meant to be before
Yeah.
any of that BS happened to you,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
to reclaim, I think that's the feeling that's coming through, right? The place in which we just
Reclaim.
step into reclaiming,
Reclaim. I
and
love that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Reclaim. Um All right. So we've talked about sort of kind of, what you're doing now.
Mm,
What would you say has been your process? Like, let's say
mm,
from the time of, well, let's do this. Let's start with, um, uh, you were sexually assaulted.
mm.
When was that something that was in childhood?
So the primary or initial trauma was when I was 10 years old with my grandfather.
Okay.
And that carried on for, about a year and a half or so. And then, through my teen years, I got into, some situations and had some experiences
Mm-hmm.
that were on a spectrum of, everything from just generally kind of freezing during sex. And it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily non consensual, but it was just
Mm-hmm.
me being dissociated and out of my body,
Right. Right. Right.
to an assault in my teen years. And then from 18 to 28, I was in an abusive relationship that was physically and verbally and emotionally abusive, which was very complex because I was also a hot, hot, hot mess in that relationship.
Mm.
And I brought my
Mhm.
own, bad
Oh,
behaviors,
oh, I
to
know,
that. I
I
wasn't,
know. Mhm,
so there was all that going on. But so that's kind of the general landscape of the
mhm.
experiences that I've had.
Yeah. So, I think it's interesting when when you're a child and you're coming up, and I don't know if people still do that with their child, but you have the boogeyman, you have the scary guy. I remember when we were a kid, it was like the scary guy who would offer you candy on
Mm,
the street, and
mm,
then he would grab, that kind of stuff.
right, right.
But when it's in your home and it's your family, that's a whole nother,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
What Yeah. What did you think? How did you feel about that? And did other family members, know that this had happened?
Yeah. So we know statistically that most childhood sexual trauma occurs with a trusted adult and
Mm-hmm.
individual, and oftentimes very much within the family. I mean, we're in like the 90%,
Yeah.
that is the case.
Mm.
Circumstances in which children are abducted, molested, assaulted by a stranger is a very low percentage for all intents and purposes.
Wow.
And so this is one of the reasons why I've started a collaboration with Toby Stark to offer a program called the Empowered Parent to change the conversation, right? To
Mm-hmm.
make sure that
Yeah.
parents are understanding that, yes, prepare children for being out on the street and being approached, but more so, what happens if there's someone who trust, love, and I think that is from the child perspective, the thing
Mm-hmm.
that was the most difficult,
Yeah.
certainly as the trauma was happening, but or even later on in adulthood as I was trying to unpack and understand this experience, because my
Mm-hmm.
grandfather, when he came to live with us when I was 5 years old, was like, that was amazing. I was like, yes, like captive audience, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're gonna play, we're gonna hang out. And there were
Mm-hmm.
years in which he was a very safe adult in my life.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Uh, and then and then he became a complex adult because he became someone who was harming me.
Yeah.
And then also still during that time living with us, we still had times of fun or safe,
Yeah.
exchanges.
Yeah.
And it's that I call it the duality, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
and people really if they often feel stuck in this place of either I have to kind of demonize this person, right? And make them like the monster to
Mm-hmm.
me, or I need to somehow explain away what they did, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that I can hold on to the love and the care and the nurturing.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so, sitting in that confusion as a child is torturous. It's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, and so that's
Mm-hmm.
a big part of the reason why we turn on ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's my fault. I'm doing something wrong. I'm
Yeah.
causing this,
Yeah.
because our minds, our little minds, just can't wrap around the idea that somebody who loves, cares for us
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
also perpetrating, harm against us.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now, in terms of your family,
Oh,
did
yeah.
this is something that you told
So,
or?
yeah, what happened was I just one day my mom happened to walk by. Oftentimes we were out on the front porch swing and there was a window, and my mom just walked by and looked out the window. Though later she told me she had just kind of a icky feeling. It was like, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
gonna go check on her and like see what's
Mm-hmm.
going on.
Yeah.
But she saw what was happening, that he was touching me inappropriately, and she just came blazing out onto the front porch in full mama
Mm-hmm.
bear, country mama bear mode, right? Like, Rachel, come in here right
Mm-hmm.
now. And it scared me as a little person because I
Yeah.
thought like I was in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to kind of work through that narrative later in life to
Mm-hmm.
reframe that and understand like she's just scared and getting me
Yeah.
away, right?
Yeah.
And then within a day, my mom and my dad had him moved out of the house.
Okay.
So they were extremely responsive, and I always
Mm-hmm.
give, like, love and celebrations,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to them,
Yeah.
for that, because certainly I've been doing this work long enough that I've heard too many
Mm-hmm.
heartbreaking stories of, people not being protected or a family
Mm-hmm.
member knowing what was going on and not doing or
Yeah.
saying anything. And then, of course, we often just feel silence. We often just don't know. That can be from a very real, direct directive of the abuser, do not tell, or I will,
Mhm,
that kind
mhm,
of intimidation.
mhm. Yeah,
Or again, we're children, so we don't even have
mhm.
the capacity or even sometimes the language
Yeah,
to
yeah,
speak up. But that was
yeah.
that was the circumstance, and I had a few run-ins with him, after that. Like my parents got him out of the house, but then didn't quite not know what to do next after that,
Right,
right?
exactly, yeah,
Wanted
I
me,
know.
yeah. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how that went for me.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how similar our stories are.
Mm.
Yeah, the front porch, it was the same with me out on the front porch. Um someone, seeing, and then
Wow.
we're figuring,
Wow.
yeah,
That
yeah,
is
yeah, seriously, and
something.
figuring out, what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that thing of, so it did happen with my grandfather, but it
Mhm.
also happens with a cousin. And unfortunately, with the grandfather, he remained in the house.
Mm.
Just it was not handled well. I wasn't, definitely wasn't protected. Um, and so
Mm.
that was interesting. Now, when it happened with my cousin, it actually happened with my cousin first, before my grandfather. And my cousin was sent away. Now, I'm an only child. He was like a brother.
Mm.
All of the everything that went on, all of the yelling and the hollering and the fighting and the police, all that stuff that went on was so traumatizing,
Gosh.
so traumatizing. And like you said, looking back, I get it. Mom was, like you said, a mama bear mode, and she was, handling things, but at the
Mm.
time, I mean, it was really
Yeah,
traumatizing. I didn't
very.
understand, I didn't understand any of it. And then he was sent away, never saw him again, never spoke of him again. And that was just, believe it or not, that was really confused. Like, I didn't
Of course.
understand.
Yeah.
And then it's never spoken of again.
Right,
Never
right.
spoken of again. Nobody says anything about it again.
Mm,
you
right.
know. Yeah.
Ooh, put it in the
Um
closet and close the door, huh? Damn.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I really appreciate the idea of, talking, which is something that I want to do at Yet Stand Inc. is talking to
Mhm.
parents, talking to adults about, you know, how to handle those kinds of situations, what to do,
Yes.
what you don't want to do, and those kinds of things. I mean, it's really important. And like I said, I get it. You're in a mode, you're in the moment, and you just react, respond, and not realizing, how re-traumatizing that can be,
Mhm. It can be. That's
for the
right.
kid. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
So
Yeah.
that's really important. Yeah.
Agreed.
Um, so what did you do? Like, after, that happened? I mean, did you
Yeah.
find yourself, like, for me, I'll say there was the withdrawing, there was the getting very
Mm.
quiet, trying to make myself very small, those kinds of
Yeah.
things. What kinds of things like that do you think you took on?
I mean, I think my first immediate reaction was just trying to put my head in the sand, right?
Yeah,
Like, "Okay,
yeah.
everybody, we're good, we're good. Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, all right, let's everybody move on," right? Like,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and yet, of course, right, the impact of these experiences was there, and, I think I became excellent at things, right? That was one of my
Mm.
coping mechanisms, like, "Let me really
Mhm.
excel at this, let me do really good at this. If I'm doing really great in
Mhm.
school, then surely everything's great."
Yeah.
Certainly humor, I mean, I was always funny even from a little kid, but now the humor sometimes had a little bit of an ulterior motive, right? A little
Mm.
bit of a, like, let me hide my sadness, let me hide my discomfort,
Mhm.
let me cover up how awkward and unworthy I feel,
Yeah.
and disconnected by, joking about it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, as I hit puberty and I got into my teen years, it's like the lid popped off and like all of the anger, all of the sadness, all of
Mhm.
the fear just came
Mhm.
like, like
Yeah.
my poor
Yeah.
parents. Oh my gosh. Right. And they're like, oh. And it was really scary at times because I didn't know what was happening. All I knew is that
Mhm.
I felt out of control at
Yeah.
times and I had these big mood swings and I felt,
Yeah.
suicidal, and I'd feel just super excited and happy and again kind of like covering it all up. And
Mhm.
I spent a lot of time seeking validation from sexual partners and
Mhm.
exploring my sexuality, feeling confused.
Mhm.
I'm bisexual, but at that time in my life I was very unsure about that, right? Like, was
Mhm.
this just a thing because I was abused? I
Yeah.
don't understand. Like, what's it all about? So I was in a lot
Mhm.
of angst about that. Oklahoma in the 80s, being bisexual is not the easiest thing.
Yikes. Yeah.
Um, so, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it was a lot of chaos, really.
Yeah.
I mean, at a certain point, it's like I just lost my grip, and I had things that anchored me, like school and like volleyball and drama club, and there were certainly friends who, while we never explicitly talked about abuse, like
Mhm.
we all knew that we had been through something,
Yeah.
that we had something in common in that way,
Yeah.
and so there was a kind of a code, if you would, of
Yeah.
understanding, and so that was a comfort. So I had just enough of those resources, and then I had parents who were attentive. I mean, they struggled. There were times when they certainly didn't get it right, but what parent
Mhm.
does?
Right.
And but they stayed by me, right?
Mhm.
They just kept at me. Like they wouldn't
Mhm.
let me drift, too
I
far
love that. Yeah.
away. So they kind of kept that container for me.
That's
So I could be
great.
a little chaotic and crazy, but never to a point, you know, um, you know, I attempted suicide and there were moments like them having to take me to the hospital, and sure that was just terrifying and scary for
Mhm.
them at the
Mhm.
time, but ultimately I got myself together and got myself into college, and I think that was a really important turning point in my life because I was the first in my family to go away to college
Mhm.
and to get out of Oklahoma in a sense, yeah, through
Mhm.
through college, right? My brother went into military, my sister went into a career, but yeah, so I've wandered on. I don't know where I ended up with your question, but
That's
that,
okay, but that's okay, but, you spoke of your siblings and,
mm,
the question pops in my head. Any experience like that for them with it? No.
not that they've
Okay.
ever named with
Okay.
me. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
my knowledge, I'm the only person that he ever abused.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Um, yeah, and you also spoke about again, the parallels in our stories because it's the same, having friends, and we know,
Mm,
the different things. I knew like a friend of mine had been a couple of friends of mine. I knew they had been raped and things like that. But it was that. It was, yeah, we know, but we don't talk about it. We don't, you know, any of
right.
that. We don't
Yeah.
even amongst each other, which I struggled with that because I wanted to. I really did. I
Mm,
wanted to talk about it and I wanted, to be able to talk about it with people who well had been there and done that and they understood and all, but it's like we don't talk. We don't talk about it. Don't touch that. Why would you want to talk about that? Let's just, yeah, yeah. That was really, really interesting. Um, so, would you say that there's a process that you went through for
mm.
healing? Were there specific things that you did that helped you in that
Sure. I
healing?
mean, I think they all added up in one way or another. So everything from the therapy that I finally kind of got into when I was 19, some hit
Hmm.
or miss therapist for sure.
Yeah,
Some people who were not good at what they did
yeah,
at the job should never have been given the
hmm,
role of therapist mentor. But
yeah.
even those people, like I remember one therapist who I said, I just want to feel normal. Man, can I just not wake up every day and feel like I'm, white knuckling it through my life
Hmm.
and through my
Hmm.
day.
Hmm.
And this therapist looked me straight in the eye and said, "No, it'll probably feel like this
Oh,
always."
oh,
And I
wow.
was like, dude, that's wrong answer.
You're
I just
right.
I was like,
So much
"My
for hope. Oh my gosh.
Right, but even that terrible, terrible response played a part in my healing because
Mm.
it created that moment of me feeling in such rejection of that, that I
Hmm.
thought, "No, there must be some," like, that was the beginning, like, the seeds of this idea of, like, "That sounds
Awesome.
wrong." Like, I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah.
what to do and what the next is, but I know that's not it. I
That's
know
not
that's
it.
not how I wanna be.
Right, right. Yeah.
And a real turning point in my life is when I divorced. We were together for 10 years, married for 3, divorced, and I just had one of these, like, I was in a new apartment, life had been stripped down a lot, and I was at a turning point. What's
Mhm.
next? What's gonna happen? And I just really felt a strong voice in that moment speaking to me, basically saying like, "Girlfriend." I don't know if you believe in angels. I love them, and my angel is very to the point and curses. She's like, "If you do not
Well,
get your shit
yeah. Oh,
together."
yeah. Yeah. Listen, they understand our
Yeah,
language, and they speak
right.
to us the way that we
How
need.
we'll hear it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. He was like, "Girlfriend, if you do not get your shit together, like, right now,
Uh-huh.
you are gonna spend the
Uh-huh.
rest of your life, suffering." And so, my
Yeah.
first process was really just starting to read a lot. I often call this, like, the book smart stage of healing, which
Mhm.
almost
Mhm.
everybody goes through. Okay, what
Mhm.
is it all?
Mhm.
Get the lingo, get the PTSD. What is it? What is it? What is it? And,
Right, right, right,
um
right. And deal with it up here, in the
yeah,
head, but not,
right.
not down in there
Not
where
really
all
processing
that
or
stuff is. Yeah.
resolving. Yeah. And
Mhm.
I had some guides and mentors along the way in that process. A few like conferences or retreats that I went
Mhm.
to certainly played a part in that. But really the biggest moment for me was when I was in my master's program and I read Dan Siegel's The Developing Mind. And that book is
Mm.
all about understanding the neuroscience of the brain, of trauma, and how that translates into relationship and
Mm.
how we behave, how we respond, how we react. And after reading that book, I really began to think about trauma as an injury. Oh, I've been
Mhm.
injured. My brain was injured, my nervous system was injured, and I can heal that injury.
Mhm.
So, how? How do I heal that like if we break a leg, we know how to heal that injury, right? Go to the hospital, get a
Mhm.
cast, da 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 da. Da.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I thought, well, there must be a similar thing for trauma. What is it?
Mhm.
And I just
Mhm.
started trying out different strategies and modalities and approaches.
Mhm.
I really leaned into cognitive behavioral.
Mhm.
Research has shown that CBT is one of the most effective
Yeah.
approaches to healing
Yeah.
trauma. And now, as the years have gone on, we're understanding more and more about somatic experiencing and working through the body. And of course, Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Body keeps
And
the score.
yeah, and I think so. So I just started again through the lens of being a teacher. Okay, so what's my homework? And I just started giving myself assignments, right? Like, okay, so if my
Mhm.
problem is cognitive distortion and I keep having these negative thoughts, and I understand the neuroscience of that, like why my brain is keeps sending these same signals, autopilot responses again and again and again.
Mhm.
How do I start to interrupt those
Mhm.
autopilot thoughts? Like, what could
Okay.
I do? And so
Yeah.
I would try this, try that. And then, it just kept going and expanding. Okay, well, what about trust? Well, what about intimacy? Well, what about I can't even communicate what I need. I can't even identify what I need, let alone
Right.
communicate it.
Right.
And so every kind of thing that I hit made me then think about, okay, so that's an area of struggle. Why is it a struggle? Let me see if I can understand why it's a struggle through neuroscience
Mhm.
and through nervous system first, and then through philosophy, psychology, relationship,
Mhm.
and then what would be the interventions that I think would resolve that for me. Um, and then I started testing it out on other people. Let me see. In many ways, it's like, how life goes, Elaine. Like, I didn't know this was not the plan. I didn't exactly expect to be here doing this work, but one
Right.
thing kind of led to another.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and honestly, like the process continued in those early years of continuing to kind of unpack and resolve certain things. But yeah, it's been just a fascinating journey in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? When I'm listening to you and listening to your process, and I just think about you hear people say, how the body and the mind and all has the ability to sort of heal itself, and
Mhm.
I think that the way that we're made, um, and how we're programmed to think, it's like I'm listening to you, and it's like, you used what was already really kind of within you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you used, and I think we all in our own way, kind of do that. Like, I'll say for me, like with writing, I wrote a play. Well, that for me,
Mm,
that was really, that was a great way for me, on my
yeah.
journey, to write about it. You have people, I'll be talking to someone, he writes songs and sings about it, and so it's kind of, it's within us.
Oh,
You
yeah.
think? It's within us. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, right? Like, so my baby is the neuroscience of trauma, right? I
Mhm.
love thinking
Mhm.
about it through that way. So if my brain is constantly in the process of trying to determine what to pay attention to, what to prioritize, the
Mhm.
brain has a natural negativity bias. It wants to look for the things that pose danger because its main job is to
Yeah.
keep us alive, right? But if my brain can do that and become so focused, on a negative thought, such as like people always leave, or I can't trust anyone, or I'm unlovable, then I can, with effort and with practice,
Mhm.
with intervention, but I can move that
Yeah.
focus to
Yeah.
something else, right?
Yeah.
I can trust some people. I am lovable.
Yeah.
And so I'm using actually the exact same mechanism in the brain. It's just
Yeah.
it's almost like the switch, like, am I switching it up over here to go and look at all the negative, bad, wrong, or am
Right.
I using it to switch myself over here? And it's not just
Right.
like be positive and positive thinking. It
Yeah.
really is about retraining the brain. It's
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
shifting it
Yeah.
from one
Yeah.
state
Yeah.
to another.
Yeah. 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 I
I'll
love
just
that.
add really quickly that, like,
Mhm.
what you're naming is so important because, what happens oftentimes is, clients come to me who've tried a lot of things. Oftentimes they say, "I've tried everything. I've tried
Everything.
everything," right? And, but then, like, again, the structure, the process, the step by step, the breaking it down into parts, the having actionable practices and tools makes a difference. But still, people who work with me are very much drawn to working through the lens of the brain, right? Through thought, through cognition.
Mhm. Mhm.
But along the way, we start to sprinkle in, body awareness. What would
Mm.
be a somatic tool to help you regulate your nervous system here? And then, of course, let's even build that toolkit more as a graduate in the
Mhm.
program. And what's really true, like, you're going to find the thing that works for you. Like,
Mhm.
maybe it's through creative arts healing, right? Like
Yeah.
writing and
Mhm.
um, creating art, plays, etc. Maybe it's
Yeah.
through cognitive. Maybe for some people, they really need to start in the body.
Yeah.
They really just need to get in their body first
Mhm.
before they can start to do any of the kind of cognitive processing. So
Mhm.
just want to name that because I understand the frustration of like, oh, like I've gone, up one side and down another, but keep searching until you
Yeah.
find that entry point that really works for you. And then what's true is a lot of the other modalities will then start to feel accessible or usable.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember, all the years of therapy and yeah, a few years back I had a therapist who talked about the cognitive, side of things and
Mhm.
would say, like just a quick example was okay, so let's just say you're going on this date with this person, you're feeling anxious and you're nervous and you're thinking about the, well, what if, or what if they do this? What if they touch me? What if, and to just sort of, turn that around and think about, but gosh, what if this is a really nice guy? What if this goes well? Like, what if, you know what I mean? Just sort of
Yeah.
just turn that
Yeah.
around, turn that what if around,
Mhm.
to just thinking a little more positively, or you think
Totally.
about a situation and sometimes, we're scared, we're nervous, and we've built up this big, huge negative about
Oh, yeah.
someone, and it's
Yeah.
turn that around and like, well, you know what? If it doesn't go well, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. Right.
What's the
Right.
worst that can happen? Are you gonna die? You know what I mean? Like just kind of, and I
Yeah.
I
Play it
found that
out. Play it out
so
a little bit.
helpful. Yeah, and I
It's so
found that
true.
so helpful. Yeah,
It's such a
yeah.
great example. It's such a great example of how the mind wants to go to the most detrimental, the
Mhm,
most
mhm,
catastrophic
mhm,
possible
mhm,
outcome
mhm.
here. And
Yeah.
if, with a little bit of movement and breath and redirection, we can go, wait a second, like there's another side to the coin
Mhm.
here. And then
Right.
that can give us the opportunity to get into the experience, to take the action so we can actually find out. Like they might turn out to be a jerk
Mhm.
or they might turn out to be great,
Yeah.
but we have to be able to have capacity
Yes.
to be curious, to
Yeah.
live the life, and that's, what
Yeah.
we're really talking about when we're talking about thriving,
Yeah.
right?
Thriving.
Trauma wants to like box us in, right? I'm going to
Mhm.
figure out all the little safe things that I can do, and I'm
Exactly.
just going to do those things. I'm not
Exactly.
moving anywhere outside of that because the
Mhm.
only thing that could possibly be outside of that is danger.
Mhm.
And then to start questioning that and then start to take some risks,
Mhm.
little first steps,
Mhm.
baby bites
Yep.
of
Yep.
life outside of
Yeah.
that container, outside of that mindset,
Yeah.
and see what happens. And people's
Right.
lives absolutely
Right.
evolve and change, and
Yeah.
people get to become, mothers. I've seen
Mhm.
so many stories.
Doctors,
Doctors
dancers.
and, fashion designers and just
Yeah.
peaceful,
Yeah.
living their lives
Yeah.
and doing it
Yeah.
each day. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, it's a wonderful thing. It really is. Um, so Rachel, if someone, I've put up your website here. Would you say, look, someone hears this and they want to get in touch with you and want to learn more about the program? Would that kind of be the
Yeah,
place to kind of start and
yeah.
yeah, and
Great place to start.
yeah, yeah,
Hop over
and
to the website and, I'll direct people to just, 2 things to look for when you get to the website. At the bottom,
mm-hmm,
you'll see an opportunity to opt in for my 3 stages of recovery checklist. That's a great place to start. It just gives you a good sense of kind of like what the stages of healing are, what you are gonna be kind of facing, or the goals of healing for each of those stages, and the best kind of support that will
mm-hmm,
align with
okay,
that. And of course, you can be in more than one stage at once, but it gives you just a good sense and you can kind of feel out where you are. So that's a
mm-hmm,
great resource to check
okay,
out.
okay.
And then if you are interested in the Beyond Surviving program and working with me in either the one-on-one or the group program, then you'll see a link there for the Discover Your Genuine Self session. And you can click on that and it'll take you to a little brief application, and then we'll set up a time to talk.
Okay, that sounds good. I like that. And I will. I'm going to keep you posted on when I go through my through the
Yes.
yeah through the free side of it that I'm going to look
Yeah.
into. Yeah, I'll keep you posted on that as I move
Sounds
along in
good.
that. Yeah, yeah. I think it's always good. I always say that everyone could use some kind of, if it's not therapy, some sort of, the personal, something,
Yeah,
every
mentorship for sure.
everyone, everyone. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. We
yeah,
all
for
need our
sure.
guides
Mhm.
in
Absolutely,
life.
absolutely,
Yeah, and sometimes we need
absolutely.
more than
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
It's true. It's
Yeah,
true.
that's true. Um, okay, I think I've asked everything that I want to ask. Is
Mm,
there anything that you would want to add? Anything that you would want to, maybe put out there, some positive, aspiration or something to others or
yeah. Well, I first of all just thank you for being the light that you are in the world, for creating this space, and for the opportunity to share time with you and to share our stories. And maybe we need to create our own Broadway dance. I'm just
I'm with you. I'm with you. I mean, I'll tell you, I can still break out in the time step.
Yes.
Have never forgotten that step.
Oh my gosh. And, for those of you listening, I just hope you've been edified and inspired, by our conversation today. I hope that if there's any part of you that's been feeling hopeless, or that you're too broken, or that you're unfixable, that you will really hear us loud and clear, that it is 100% possible to break free from the pain of the past and move on with your life, reclaim or claim the things that have felt
Mhm,
lost or destroyed, but they really have not.
mhm.
And if there's any way that I can be a resource and a support to you in that journey, I'm here. Reach out. Let's have a conversation. Check out the resources, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
All right, great. That was good. That was good. I like that. Okay, well, I really appreciate your
Mm.
talking to me. I can't even remember how long ago it was before that you and I talked, but we've managed to stay,
Yeah.
this great thing called social media. So we've kind of
Keeps us
stayed,
connected. Yeah.
connected.
There's some good things
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah.
Few good things.
And
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely,
Amazing.
absolutely. Yeah,
Thank you,
it's
Elaine.
been
So
really a
nice to see you
pleasure.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Much love to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
See you
anyone
again
that listens
soon.
in, This was Thrive, Flourish, Prosper. We talked with Rachel Grant about Beyond Surviving. You can reach her as shown on the screen, rachelgrantcoaching.com. And remember, everyone, you matter, your body matters, your voice matters, your healing and your life matters. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.